Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became Forbidden Demon King and he built a legendary harem with Sakura, Tsunade, Hinata. Part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. Hinata's face instantly turned crimson at Naruto's sudden words, making her stutter even more. Wife. No, I haven't. Such a thing as two. At this moment, Naruto's mind was entirely on the avatar character. Great. Any identity. If this is the case, then Shinobi God created successfully. The God persona has been successfully created. The host can speak once a day through this persona. Naruto couldn't help but cough in his heart. It really was any identity. Although this thing is useless, it can allow people within a certain range to receive the avatar's words. Well, isn't that just like the Yamanaka clan's ninjutsu? Never mind. Will I be able to speak as the Shinobi God in the future? Woohoo! Awesome! The shy Hinata mustered up the courage to look at Naruto, and seeing the joy on his face as he gazed affectionately at her, her face turned even redder. Naruto-kun, overwhelmed, Hinata's legs went weak, and she fell backward. Hinata. Naruto was startled and quickly caught her, but no matter how he called, Hinata didn't respond. Why did she pass out just like that? Naruto muttered, touching her forehead and checking her breathing. Only then did he feel relieved enough to place her gently on the soft grass. Seeing that Hinata wouldn't wake up for a while, he decided to process the big fish they had caught first. He gathered some wood nearby to make a barbecue rack and finally sat down to open the system panel. Shinobi God can speak today. What should I say? Naruto fell into deep thought, since it was a broadcasting tool, and it also carried the title of the Shinobi God, but it could only speak once a day. Why not just make a diary of the Shinobi God? Well, let's just do it. Naruto typed the following string of words into the input box. August 15th, Sunny. Shinobi God's diary. Shinobi nowadays are all idiots. If there are no long-legged shrine maidens in short skirts performing sacrificial dances, I might as well destroy this world. And there are too many Sharingan on that guy Shimura Danzo. So disgusting. Ding. The Shinobi God was created successfully, broadcasting range 50 square kilometers. At this moment, Hiruzen, who was working on a document, suddenly trembled and scribbled the entire document. The words of the Shinobi God suddenly appeared in his mind, and the content almost made him spit out blood. When he turned around to look at the guards beside him and found that Yamashiro Aoba and Namiyashi Rado both had strange expressions, he knew something was wrong. Hokage-sama. They walked to the front of Sarutobi Hiruzen's desk in unison and looked at him nervously. The situation had exceeded his expectations. When words could appear out of thin air in their mind, Aoba and Rado, as Hokage's guards, had already realized the seriousness of the matter. As for the content of that diary entry, they are so similar that they dare not even think about it. Emergency situation. Summon the Konoha's council immediately. But first, call Yamanaka Inoichi. Hiruzen gave the order with a stern face. Yes. Aoba and Rado accepted the order and left immediately. The Yamanaka clan is one of the few clans in Konoha skilled in mental techniques. The clan leader, Yamanaka Inoichi, is particularly skilled in techniques like mind-reading technique, capable of extracting information even if the enemy didn't speak. Meanwhile, Danzo, who was resting with his eye closed, was frightened by this sudden text and turned pale. However, he quickly calmed down. He knew that there must be someone behind this, and he had to find that person. Come here. Danzo called out. Bang bang bang. 5 masked root shinobi suddenly appeared and half knelt in front of Danzo. Go find out what's going on. Yes, Danzo-sama. On the other side, the Shinobi God himself was teaching Hinata how to grill fish, feeling no guilt at all and enjoying this sweet moment. See, Hinata, flipping the fish like this will make it more tender. Tasty. Question. If a teammate suddenly collapses during a mission and you ask if they're okay, and they respond with, "I'm fine," what does it mean? It means, Hinata held a piece of fish, frowning as she fell into deep thought. The orange sunset shining on her made her look even more adorable. The two were sitting on a picnic cloth, playing a question and answer game. Although the game was a bit childish, for two teenagers who had feelings for each other, it was just perfect. Hinata had also received the Shinobi God's diary. Naruto told her that he received it too, and brushed off the topic with a few vague sentences, claiming he didn't understand it. It means your teammate needs medical attention. Hinata answered softly. Wrong. Naruto gently tapped Hinata's head and said seriously, this means that your teammate's airway is unobstructed and not blocked by blood. So that's how it is. Hinata nodded confusedly, thinking that Naruto was imparting knowledge seriously. So what should you ask them at this moment? Where does it hurt? No, you should ask them what is 1000-7. A chew. A minus chew. A minus chew. Kiba, what's wrong? It's nothing. Hinata's teammate, Kiba stopped and sniffled, then said, maybe I inhaled some pollen. Kiba's sister, Inuzuka Hana, walked over and squatted in front of Akamaru to check his injured leg. As the only veterinarian in the medical department, Akamaru's minor injury was no big deal for her. Sis, those things that appeared in our minds just now. I'm a bit concerned, Kiba said worriedly. Kiba, this matter involves Danzo-sama, a high-ranking figure in Konoha. It's best if we don't talk too much about it. Hana, being a mature woman, was naturally more stable than Kiba. She and Itachi graduated from the same batch. Relying on the resources of the Inuzuka clan, she is now a chunin in Konoha. Having spent so many years in the medical department, she had heard a lot of secrets, but in order to avoid trouble, she had always kept quiet about them. For example, she knew about the time when the Konoha corpse disposal unit was blocked by Root's shinobi outside the Uchiha clan's compound, and then how the Uchiha clan's bodies were cremated overnight by Root. Then, there are also some unsavory rumors, such as the claim that the Hokage secretly allowed Root to conduct Kekkei Genkei experiments on humans. There are many such rumors and secrets. The true and false interwoven, making it hard to discern reality. Hana, want her only brother to get involved in these troublesome matters, nor did she want Kiba to do something foolish and attract Root's attention. That organization was notorious for its unethical actions. If Kiba got dragged into it, his life would be ruined. Kiba had no idea of his sister's good intentions, and due to the pressure of his age, he could only suppress his curiosity and squat beside his beloved dog, Akamaru. Sis, how's Akamaru? He'll be fine. Similar scenes were happening all over Konoha. In the training ground, Kakashi looked at the gloomy-faced Sasuke, not knowing what to say. It was getting late, and night was falling. Kakashi could only see the dark outline of Sasuke standing in the training ground, his heart suddenly pounding with anxiety, sensing something was wrong. Sasuke, don't fall for it. This might be an enemy's genjutsu. Sasuke didn't respond. He just stood there without moving, his whole body exuding a chilling aura of resentment. He raised his head and looked at Kakashi, and asked through gritted teeth. Why does Danzo have my clan's eyes on him? Kakashi was also stunned. He knew Danzo was unscrupulous, but he didn't expect him to be such a beast. Too many eyes. Could he have transplanted eyes on other parts of his body as well? Thinking of this, Kakashi felt a chill in his heart. But despite this, without absolute proof, he couldn't explain such matters to Sasuke. Pulling out one rotten radish could bring up more dirt. Danzo wasn't clean, but he wasn't the only one. From Kakashi's understanding of Danzo, things were never that simple. Sasuke, calm down. Kakashi, how can I calm down? Sizzle. The prepared fish slid into the frying pan, crackling and popping by the fire, its aroma wafting through the night air. Naruto-kun, you brought a pan? Hinata asked, slightly embarrassed. Of course I bring it. For a picnic, you need to be fully equipped. Naruto pointed at the pile of utensils and said, a frying pan is a must. I'll show you something nice later. What is it? Hinata was stunned for a moment and her face turned red again. Naruto glanced at Hinata, seeing her face flushed from the fire, and smiled mysteriously as he flipped the fish in the pan. You'll find out soon. The Hokage Tower was brightly lit at this time, and many shinobi were rushing in and out of the entrance, with nervousness and anxiety on their faces. At the higher-ups meeting, Hiruzen and his old peers, including Udatane Kaharu and Mitokado Homura, all stared gloomily at Danzo, who was seated at the table. Danzo, do you have anything to say? Kaharu asked sternly. I have nothing to say. Danzo said with his hands crossed, shouldn't the focus of this matter be the ninjutsu that can appear in everyone's mind? If the person behind this can say whatever they want, the village will be in a passive position. Today, it's me being targeted. Tomorrow, it could be anyone. I suggest we take a wait-and-see attitude towards this matter and let our people investigate it. Danzo said in a deep voice. After he finished speaking, Kaharu, Homura and Hiruzen looked displeased, but they didn't say anything else or continued to hold him accountable. They also knew that it was unrealistic to ask Danzo to prove his innocence on the spot. It was not that it was impossible, but it would be counterproductive. After all, if proven true, it would only make things awkward. The village still needed Danzo, so they couldn't just dismiss him. Besides, what Danzo said made sense. Every higher-ups present had their own secrets, though not as extreme as Danzo's. If there truly was an all-knowing shinobi god, the next exposed could be any one of them. Bang! Several fireworks rose into the night sky, illuminating Hinata's upturned face, and the beautiful appearance of the gorgeous fireworks exploding was reflected in her eyes. Joy spread across Hinata's face as she gazed at the night sky, feeling an unparalleled sense of happiness. And all of this was thanks to the boy beside her, the one lighting fireworks in the distance. Naruto had completely forgotten about the shinobi god's diary, not giving it a second thought, let alone the huge disturbance it caused to the village. He trotted over to Hinata and stood beside her. The two of them looked up at the fireworks, and their hearts are filled with happiness. At this moment, they couldn't help but think happily in their hearts. This is great. To have Naruto-kun by my side, I'm so happy. This is great. I've finally spent some money, I'm so happy. Goodbye, Naruto-kun. Hinata stood under the gate of the Hyuga clan's compound, reluctantly waving goodbye to Naruto. Her small frame seemed almost fragile. Naruto guessed that it might have something to do with the secrets of the Hyuga clan's main family, but he didn't dwell on it. For him, the present moment was what mattered. Hinata, full and warm, wasn't just a simple paper figure. He could feel the tension and gloom behind her smile, like a girl dancing with shackles on her feet. Goodbye, Hinata-chan. Naruto waved. Hinata nodded, took a few steps into the darkness, then turned back to him and said, Thank you, Naruto-kun. I am very happy today. Me too. The next day, before dawn, Naruto woke up, opened the system panel, and started updating the shinobi god's diary. Yesterday's events were long forgotten, and he felt refreshed. August 16th, the desire to destroy the shinobi world has grown stronger. Another day without seeing long legs. The caged bird of the Hyuga clan is the most disgusting slave system I've ever seen, turning family members into slaves. After 1,000 years, shouldn't the seal have been improved? The original intent to protect the weak branch family has changed, hasn't it? After posting it, Naruto shook his head, squinted his sleepy eyes, and went back to sleep. Over Konoha. After a few seconds of silence, screams erupted. The entire Konoha village was completely shaken by this daily update of the shinobi god's diary. If yesterday's message made the high-level officials a bit panicked, now they were utterly overwhelmed. The bedside lamp in the room was turned on. The meeting of Konoha's higher-ups ended at 2 o'clock in the morning. Only 3 hours later, Inoichi had to get up again. Inoichi, do you really have to go? I'm worried. Sitting on the dimly lit bed, the noble lady, Rhino, spoke with a tired look on her face. It'll be fine. Inoichi comforted his wife while putting on his clothes. Usually, only Shikaku needs to attend higher-ups meetings to represent the Ino-Shika-cho clans. But you also know that the message that can appear in our minds is really strange. Our Yamanaka clan is the only one in the village who is good at mind-reading ninjutsu. If I don't go, it will only arouse suspicion. Then take care, Inoichi. Rhino said softly. After a moment of silence, Rhino spoke again as she got dressed and got out of bed. Inoichi, are the things the shinobi god said true? Inoichi didn't know how to answer, so he could only sigh and answer vaguely. Probably not. How could something like the shinobi god exist? It's definitely someone's doing. The village will get to the bottom of it and give everyone an explanation. Rhino. Inoichi was dressed neatly and prepared to go out. When his hand held the door, he turned around and looked back at his wife and said, "Go keep our daughter company." Ino must be terrified. Yes, be careful on the way. With a bang, the door closed. As Inoichi walked on the road, the originally quiet Konoha had already become chaotic. The villagers walked onto the streets, talking about the shinobi god's diary with horror on their faces. Does the shinobi god really exist? It's been 2 days, it doesn't seem fake. A worried villager said with some fear. Who knows? The village hasn't given any explanation yet. But I don't think it's fake. The owner of the dango shop said as he stood at the door of his shop, there's dark circles under his eyes. I couldn't sleep a wink because of this. How can anyone sleep soundly? That's right, we don't know where Hokage-sama is, and he hasn't appeared to say anything yet. Another villager said with a sigh. So, do you think what the shinobi god said is true? One of the villager asked in a low voice, about that esteemed person in the Hyuga clan. Upon hearing this, the first speaking villager looked terrified and nervously said, you can eat recklessly, but you can't speak recklessly. If the Anbu hears you, you'll be taken away. We shouldn't discuss the Hyuga clan's matters either. Just keep your thoughts to yourself. Yeah, we shouldn't talk about such things. The other villager echoed. Inoichi, who was passing by, overheard the villagers' conversation and his expression grew even heavier. He had heard about the slavery system of the Hyuga clan before, and it was indeed a truly unacceptable practice. Turning one's relatives into slaves was a deeply taboo topic, so those in Konoha who knew about it instinctively avoided discussing it. Over time, most people in Konoha were unaware of this, but those who survived the Third Shinobi World War were well aware of it. It was a curse known as the caged bird. If the cursed person showed even a hint of disrespect to the group that casts the curse, the caster could punish or even kill them instantly. This is the reality of the Hyuga clan. Only the firstborn of the main family could remain in the main family, while all other clan members became part of the branch family. The so-called branch family were essentially slaves to the main family, a system that allowed the Hyuga clan to maintain their lineage for 1,000 years by ensuring absolute loyalty through the caged bird. Absolute loyalty meant no betrayal, as any traitor would be brain dead with just a thought from the main family. In life and death situations, branch family members were forced to protect the main family at all costs. It is precisely because of this that the Byakugan Kekkei Genkei can survive and continue no matter what happens. Interestingly, the Hyuga clan's main family under Hiashi had not followed tradition. The eldest daughter did not become the main family's leader, and the second daughter wasn't marked as branch family. Instead, things were delayed. As for why it was delayed, Inoichi didn't know. He had only heard about it and didn't care much about the Hyuga clan's secrets. His priority now was to capture the self-proclaimed shinobi god and restore peace to the village. At least restore the appearance of peace, as what happened beneath the surface was unimportant. The atmosphere within the Hyuga clan was extremely oppressive. The area inside and outside the clan was quieter than ever before, as if it had submerged in suffocating stillness. As the morning sunlight entered the courtyard, Neji sat in front of the mirror, calmly gazing at the green caged bird cursed seal on his forehead. I slept so well. Naruto, in his bare pajamas, yawned and stretched on his bed. The evil shinobi god himself, lacking any grace, scratched his butt and lazily began his morning routine. Looking at his bedhead in the mirror, he yawned again, muttering to himself. There are still 14 D-rank missions that have not been completed. I should go and get a mission today, so that people won't find out that I have hired a stand-in. Naruto. Just as he was about to enter the Hokage Tower, Naruto was suddenly called out too. Turning around, he saw the new generation of the Ino-Shika-Cho trio. The three of them stood outside the Hokage Tower, seemingly waiting for someone. Shikamaru leaned against the wall, lazily waving at him. He's dressed in his usual mesh undershirt with his signature dead fish eyes. Ino stood aside with an uneasy look on her face, distracted, while Choji was still the same as usual, holding a bag of potato chips in his arms and crunching the food into his mouth. What are you guys doing here? Naruto, familiar with the three, didn't bother with formalities and reached out to grab some snacks from Choji's bag of potato chips. Crunch. Naruto took a bite as Shikamaru, without even glancing at him, looked up at the sky and sighed. Asuma had something come up last minute, so we're just waiting for him here. After saying that, Shikamaru asked Naruto, you know about that thing, right? Which thing? That guy who calls himself the shinobi god. He's spoken twice now, and the village is in chaos because of it. Oh, that thing. Naruto scratched his head and said with a bright smile, I thought it was just someone's prank. How can the ability to let the whole village receive the message be an ordinary prank? Shikamaru complained, holding his head, Naruto, you're too dense. But the shinobi god must be a super pervert. He was talking about things like long legs and shrine maidens in short skirts. No one will believe it anyway, it's just nonsense. Naruto said dismissively, then looked at Choji. Choji raised his eyebrows, bit off a potato chip in one bite, and said naively, the last chip is my ninja way. Only someone as clueless as you wouldn't believe it, Naruto. Shikamaru said, the stuff about the Hyuga clan is true. What stuff? Naruto asked, pretending not to know. It's about Shikamaru. Asuma-sensei is coming out. Choji suddenly shouted. Naruto, let's talk about it next time. We have to go first. Shikamaru glanced toward the Hokage Tower and saw that Asuma had indeed come out. So he waved at Naruto and followed after Choji and Ino, who had started walking away. Ino didn't say a word to Naruto the whole time, not even looking at him. Naruto didn't mind and turned to enter the Hokage Tower once the trio was out of sight. The building was in chaos, with Anbu and regular Chunin carrying various documents and rushing around. Occasionally, Naruto could hear them nervously discussing the shinobi god and he could occasionally hear words like Hyuga. Tilting his head, Naruto went upstairs quietly and familiarly to go to the mission hall to take a D-rank mission. Kakashi punished him to complete 20 D-rank missions, and he could not return to Team 7 before that. D-rank missions weren't particularly difficult. As Naruto climbed the stairs, pondering what today's mission might be, he suddenly heard someone coming down, swearing loudly. They want me to find out in one day. Where am I supposed to investigate? That damned shinobi god, if I get my hands on him, I'll torture him thoroughly. The scar-faced brute named Morino Ibiki went downstairs with his men from the torture and interrogation force and just passed by Naruto who was going upstairs. Scary. Naruto shivered, more determined than ever to hide his identity as the shinobi god. There must be no evidence linking him to it. He felt a deep-seated fear of the head of the torture and interrogation force, Morino Ibiki. It wasn't that Ibiki was particularly strong, but this man was a true pervert. Standing at nearly 1.8 meters tall and built like a muscular neighbor from a Japanese movie, Ibiki was secretly a masochist. His interrogation techniques not only tortured enemies but also inflicted pain on himself. Just the thought of it made Naruto shudder. The image of a burly man with a pained yet pleased expression was so disturbing that it made Naruto want to end it all. This is the mission scroll, please take it. The staff at the mission hall handed the mission scroll to Naruto with a good attitude. Naruto walked out of the Hokage Tower and opened the mission scroll. The mission was to pick up trash. Where was there so much trash to pick up in Konoha? Struggling for a while, Naruto reluctantly set off to pick up trash. In the sweltering August heat, the scorching sun quickly wore him out. He hid under a tree's shade, staring blankly at the blue sky. After a while, he threw down the trash bag and wandered off by himself. Ah, so refreshing. Naruto bought 2 ice creams from a convenience store and left with a swagger, ignoring the shopkeeper's puzzled look. As soon as he stepped outside, the heat hit him like a wave. Naruto, who had nothing to do, simply squatted in front of the convenience store and ate both ice creams, making the kids next to him cry with envy. Naruto turned to look at the 4 kids standing in the sunlight, tanned and dirty. With a slight shift in his eyes, he called out to them. Come here. Seeing the blonde who had just eaten 2 expensive ice creams calling them, the kids looked at each other in confusion. In the end, they were drawn over by the sight of Naruto 2 ice creams at once. Want some? Naruto waved the ice cream in his hand. The 4 kids are only a few years younger than Naruto, and consisted of 3 boys and a girl. They should be 8 or 9 years old, with unkempt hair and clothes. From this, it was obvious they were Konoha's orphans. Yes, the leading boy said, I can buy each of you an ice cream, but you have to answer a question first, Naruto said. The children hesitated for a moment and then nodded one after another. Naruto narrowed his eyes and scanned the 4 people, wondering if one of them might be the protagonist from some orphanage story. What's the meaning of YOLO? The 4 kids looked at each other, none of them knowing the answer. Seeing no one could answer, Naruto showed a disappointed look but still went back into the store to buy 5 ice creams, 1 for each of them, including himself. The 4 kids in Naruto squatted at the store entrance, their ice creams without a care in the world. Do you want to eat ice cream every day? Yes. 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 4 pairs of bright eyes stared at Naruto, who smiled and said, then you have to do me a favor. As the orange sunset slanted across the sky, Naruto lay on a hammock with an 8-year-old girl fanning him intermittently. 3 boys were running towards him, sweating and carrying trash bags, shouting happily, Boss, we've picked them all up. Naruto woke up from the hammock and saw it was already late. He waved to the 4 little helpers he had just recruited and said, let's go, I'll treat you guys to ramen. Yeah, a chorus of cheers erupted as the 4 kids, full of excitement, followed him to Ichiraku Ramen not far away. Pulling back the warm curtain, Tsuki, the owner of Ichiraku, was about to welcome them when he looked up and saw Naruto leading 4 dirty children inside. Tsuki was momentarily stunned but quickly returned to his usual demeanor and warmly asked, what would you like to eat? Naruto actually doesn't like ramen very much. He gets a little tired of it after eating it a few times. Fortunately, he is not picky about food. Besides, he also wants to have close contact with Tsuki. Who knows, maybe Tsuki's real surname was Otsutsuki. After all, any shinobi who hadn't eaten at Ichiraku Ramen seemed doomed to meet an untimely end. For this reason, Naruto always eats ramen with a pilgrimage mentality. The 4 children seemed a little reserved. They didn't dare to speak while standing behind Naruto. They just glanced timidly at the menu on the wall. Although Konoha's orphans are basically subsidized, they are also divided into different levels. In short, the situation of these 4 kids is not good. They are probably just barely able to get enough food. Even Ichiraku ramen was an unattainable delicacy for the 4 of them. I'll have the tonkatsu ramen, Naruto said, and bring the same for my 4 friends. Sure. Wait a moment. Tsuki responded cheerfully and headed back to the kitchen. Under the warm lights, the 4 kids sat somewhat uncomfortably, while Naruto yawned and chatted with them out of boredom. Have you ever had tonkatsu ramen? No. The 4 of them shook their heads. Then come and eat it every day from now on until you get sick of it. Naruto said casually, as if it was just a trivial remark. He didn't even know what these 4's names were. Naruto didn't ask and they didn't tell him. How is that possible? It is really possible, because what Naruto had the most now is money, and he has no place to spend it. He has no habit of squandering, and there is no reason for him to spend money casually. You'll see. Naruto said. Anyway, meet me at the same place tomorrow. There'll be ice cream and ramen again. Got it, boss. The 4 of them showed happy expressions and answered in unison. Naruto was genuinely bored, which is why he did seemingly pointless things. But until he finished those 20D rank missions, he might not even be able to participate in the Chunin exam. If that's the case, then Naruto would just have to waste his August and September in boredom. Watching the 4 eat happily, Naruto yawned again, feeling no appetite. He thought to himself, when will this boring day end? I can't wait for the Chunin exams. Late into the night, Naruto parted ways with the 4 kids. This scene happened to be witnessed by Ino, who had just finished her training. She was a little confused as to why Naruto was hanging out with those kids. However, after watching them part ways, Ino didn't think too much about it and walked towards the Yamanaka flower shop. She didn't know how to face Naruto now and didn't want to complicate their relationship further, so she decided to calm down for a while. However, not long after she walked away, she brushed shoulders with an odd old man dressed in white hair. He was tall, wearing a mesh undershirt training suit covered with a red coat, and a headband with the word, oil, written on it. When did such the village have such a person? Ino looked back at the man for a long time, but in the end, she did not follow him. She felt that it might be related to the Chunin exams that Konoha was going to host soon, as there are also many people coming from other villages. Now that she thinks about it this way, it makes sense. Naruto also saw Jiraiya from a distance but didn't approach him. Instead, he headed home in his own direction. If I get involved with Jiraiya, my future will definitely be troublesome. He really didn't want to inherit the title of the Child of Prophecy. Honestly, Naruto couldn't believe what a toad had said. Now that he is the shinobi god, even though it was just an avatar, it had its advantages. Although it might not be useful, spreading hellish jokes around Konoha and disrupting public order wasn't a bad thing. Unfortunately, Naruto had to make sure he wasn't caught. Besides himself, no one else could know he was the whining shinobi god. After returning home, Naruto went to sleep as usual. At midnight, Naruto's biological clock made him suddenly open his eyes, then he checked the panel to update the shinobi god's diary on time. August 17th, the Will of Fire is the shinobi world's trash. After sending it, Naruto fell back asleep. The next day, Konoha held a public lecture on the Will of Fire. Shinobi were distributing pamphlets about the Will of Fire everywhere in the streets, and many slogans were posted on walls. Kakashi even informed Naruto to remember to attend the Will of Fire advanced course at the academy, and also helped Sasuke and Sakura to attend the class. No way, I still have D-rank missions to do, Naruto complained. I would have almost forgotten if you hadn't mentioned it. Kakashi scratched his head while squatting on Naruto's window. How about this? Use transformation jutsu to substitute for Sasuke and Sakura in class, and you can skip the D-rank missions. Deal. Oh, by the way, Kakashi suddenly remembered something and said before leaving, tomorrow, the three of you will go to the academy to submit your application forms for the Chunin exams. I have already submitted your names. Got it. After giving the instructions, Kakashi disappeared. Ah. Naruto woke up lazily, washed up, and suddenly remembered his appointment with the four kids. So, he skipped class altogether. At the entrance of the convenience store, Naruto and his gang of 5 squatted in a row, holding ice cream in their hands and them synchronously, with the scorching sun a few meters away from them. So, boss, you don't have to pick up trash today? One of the boys asked, sounding a bit disappointed. Nah, not for now. Got other things to do. Naruto replied, swallowing his ice cream in one gulp and casually tossing away the stick. Then, he said, wait for me here. We'll have barbecue together around noon. The only girl among the 4 raised her head, her messy long hair framing her face. She looked at Naruto and asked, why are you being so nice to us? No reason. Naruto glanced back at them. If I don't hang out with you guys, I wouldn't know what else to do. Anyway, just wait for me here obediently. Leaving those words behind, Naruto walked away without looking back. As his figure disappeared into the distance, one of the slightly thinner boys suddenly spoke up, his voice cracking like a duck, a voice that was clearly that of a 13 or 14-year-old going through puberty. Hey, Tayuya, isn't this Kyuubi's Jinchuriki a bit too easy to fool? The girl named Tayuya glared at the person who spoke and said, shut up. Keep talking like that, and I'll kill you. But the ice cream is pretty good though. Kidomaru said, are we really going to wait here for him? Orochimaru-sama's orders were for us to pose as orphans and infiltrate Konoha, and to take advantage of the Chunin exams to carry out the Konoha Crush plan. But it seems like there's still some time before the Chunin exams start. Konoha seems to have attracted a lot of attention these days. I'm not waiting anymore. Can't keep up this act. Sakin and Ukin said, I'm going to wander around. Well, it's not like we'll really starve to death without that guy. Kidomaru then shouted to Sakin and Ukin, wait for me. The two left, leaving behind only Jirobo and Tayuya in child form. Hey, Tayuya, Jirobo looked at their departing companions, you're not seriously waiting for him, are you? Mind your own business. Tayuya scowled and walked off in a different direction alone. Meanwhile, Naruto returned to the class at the academy, using transformation technique to cover for Sasuke and Sakura in class. At the lectern, the female instructor, Suzume, was preaching about the will of fire. Despite her melodious voice, it couldn't compensate for the outdated ideals of the will of fire, and Naruto found himself dozing off. In a daze, he fell asleep right on his desk. When he woke up again, the classroom was already empty, and the sunset glow seeped in through the windows. Oops, I messed up. I had plans to eat barbecue with those 4, Naruto muttered to himself. He really had been idle lately, and having a few people to hang out and eat with was nice. Training was out of the question, and he didn't have to do D-rank missions anymore, just waiting for the Chunin exams. In the meantime, Naruto had already figured out how to waste his time. But now the situation was a bit awkward, as he had overslept. Oh no, it's so embarrassing, I overslept. Naruto hastily wiped his drool, then rushed out of the door. I wonder why I've been so sleepy lately. While grumbling, Naruto dashed out of the academy. When he arrived at the place they had agreed to meet in the morning, there was no one in the dusty land dimmed by sunset. Come to think of it, who would wait from noon to afternoon? They would definitely think they were being fooled, right? Or they would think that the person simply didn't care about the appointment. Naruto sighed softly. His newfound food buddies were gone, but since things had come to this, he might as well eat first. Just then, his stomach growled loudly, coincidentally followed by another set of growls from behind a nearby stack of cardboard boxes. Hearing the noise, Naruto was also stunned. A girl came out timidly from behind the cardboard boxes. At the barbecue restaurant, the sizzling meat emitted a tantalizing aroma as it touched the hot oiled grill. Naruto grilled the meat and placed it into his and the girl's bowl. Dig in, dig in. Naruto couldn't help but start eating himself. After a few bites, the girl suddenly looked up at Naruto and asked in confusion, "Isn't barbecue expensive?" "It's not expensive," Naruto said vaguely. "Don't worry, I can totally afford it." The girl nodded and started eating the barbecue slowly. After they finished, Naruto asked if she needed to bring some food back for the other three. "No need, I think they might have found something to eat already," the girl said with her hands behind her back and smiled. "All right then. By the way, if come back tomorrow morning, just wait for me here." Naruto scratched his head and said, "I will be here early. Today is an accident." "Okay." The girl nodded earnestly. After the two parted ways, Naruto walked home at his usual leisurely pace, while Tayuya turned towards an alley and quickly disappeared into the darkness. "Tayuya, did you really wait there for an entire afternoon?" Kitamura asked disdainfully. "Did you end up meeting him?" "Yeah, and we had barbecue, but none for you," Tayuya replied casually. "Do you really think you're an orphan? Don't forget Orochimaru-sama's mission," Kitamura warned. "One meal of barbecue and you're bought off." "Yep," Tayuya said. "One meal of barbecue, and I'm bought off. I got to eat it, you didn't." Orochimaru-sama's mission hasn't started yet, I know what I'm doing," Tayuya said. "You don't need to lecture me. Just take care of yourselves." "Tayuya, since you said so," Kitamura looked at Tayuya and seemed to be hesitant to speak, and finally said nothing. The next day, after waking up, Naruto did not update the Shinobi God's diary as usual because he was visited by the Anbu. "Hokage-sama wishes to see you." Oh. On the way, Naruto remembered his promise from yesterday and felt a bit irritated. He hoped this meeting would not take up too much of his time, otherwise he would break his promise again. After entering the Hokage's office, Naruto met the Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. The old Hokage was sitting at the Hokage table, smoking a pipe and looking at Naruto up and down. "Naruto, a lot of things have happened in the village recently." Hiruzen began. "What do you think?" "I haven't noticed much difference," Naruto replied indifferently. "Anyway, the village is safe with Hokage-sama here. I saw your name on the list for the upcoming Chunin exams." Hiruzen glanced at Naruto and said, "Given the current state of the village, and your importance to it, I hope you'll withdraw from this exam." "Okay." Naruto barely hesitated. "Can I go now?" "Don't you want to know why?" Hiruzen looked at Naruto in surprise and said, "I originally thought you would not be able to accept it. The Chunin exam's a great opportunity for a genin to showcase their skills." "Nothing to ask," Naruto answered in a proper manner. "The village must have its reasons for making such arrangements. I don't mind. The essence of a shinobi is obedience, right? I don't mind anymore." Hiruzen's expression grew serious, but he couldn't find the words to respond. He looked at Naruto, and Naruto also looked at him. "Hokage-sama, may I leave now?" "You may." After receiving the affirmative response, Naruto turned around and left without any hesitation. Before closing the door, he heard Hiruzen sigh. Perhaps Sandaime didn't want Naruto to become just a weapon for the village, but the current Naruto didn't have such an optimistic view. He saw the village's attitude towards him, and he didn't want to sacrifice himself for Konoha. With the system, he didn't need others to teach him ninjutsu, nor external help to control the Kyuubi. If he wanted, the system could completely skip the Kyuubi and directly extract its power. As long as he wanted to, Naruto doesn't need to rely on anyone and can live as he pleases. Kyuubi is just a fox living in his body, so why should he avoid him? With the system in hand, there was no reason to avoid it. Sooner or later, one day, he'd crush the Kyuubi with a single punch. Stepping out of the Hokage's office, Naruto felt the sunlight on his skin, but it offered no warmth. He glanced around and headed in a particular direction. The bustling streets of Konoha were as lively as ever, filled with people going about their day. Walking along the road, Naruto had already put the recent events behind him. Since Sandaime wanted him to skip the Chunin exams, he might as well continue causing some trouble in Konoha. After arriving at the meeting spot, Naruto saw the little girl and immediately put on a smile. Everyone was busy preparing for the Chunin exams. Originally, Naruto had D-rank missions to pass the time, but Kakashi had exempted him from those missions. However, Sandaime asking him to give up taking the Chunin exams instantly made Naruto felt like he was back to square one. Kakashi was busy coaching Sasuke, Sakura was engrossed in learning medical ninjutsu, and all the other teams were preparing for the Chunin exams. Even Hinata was working hard. Everyone was busy except Naruto, who was doing nothing. He was like the white clouds drifting in the sky, free yet incredibly bored. So in the mornings, Naruto took the little girl to the forest to catch animals, and in the afternoons, they fished in a shallow creek. By sunset, they were atop the Hokage rock, overlooking the Konoha village. Although Naruto occasionally asked about the whereabouts of the other three, the girl would vaguely reply that they were off playing on their own. He didn't mind and continued to enjoy his leisure. If you are alone, even the most delicious food will lose some of its flavor. Having someone to share meals with greatly satisfies Naruto's desire to show off. Anyway, he was not short of money, so they had barbecue for lunch and Ichiraku ramen in the afternoon. The next day, he changed his taste to seafood, and then mountain delicacies. As the days passed, the time for the Chunin exams drew closer. This must cost a lot, right? The girl looked at Naruto and asked, somewhat puzzled. Even though she was ignorant, she felt that this extremely expensive lifestyle was a bit exaggerated. Naruto, however, was unfazed and replied casually, does it? The night breeze blew past them as they stood on the Hokage rock, gazing at the thousand lights of Konoha. Naruto jumped onto the railing, squatted down, and said, as long as we're happy, money is not important. Naruto waited a long time for a response. When he turned to look at the girl, she looked as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. What's wrong? Naruto asked, and then added, let's go to the Valley of the End tomorrow. There seems to be a big red fish over there. Valley of the End should be far from Konoha. I don't know why the author wrote so. I can't go tomorrow. The girl suddenly said, that's fine, I can go alone. Naruto said, what about the day after tomorrow? It seems like we've been to all the places we should go. There's nothing fun to do now. I have something important to do. I might not have time to hang out with you anymore. The girl said hesitantly, I really want to, but it's really important. Naruto was stunned for a moment. He then jumped off the railing, and suddenly smiled and said, come on, if you have something to do, just go. We're both from Konoha, right? We'll definitely have time to hang out again. Yeah. The girl's eyes dimmed a little when she said this. Alright, go ahead. We'll hang out again when you're free. Naruto said, waving her off with no hint of sadness on his face. Okay. The girl nodded, stood there for a while, then slowly turned around until she completely disappeared into the darkness. Under the night sky, Naruto let out a long sigh. His face showed a hint of melancholy, but he quickly brightened up again. At this time, the only people sneaking into Konoha are likely Orochimaru's people, Tayuya. At this time, Tayuya had already returned to the residence of the four-member team. Although it was called a residence, it was actually just an abandoned house with leaks. Hey, Tayuya, Why are you back so late again? Kitamaru called out from a distance. None of your business. Tayuya said coldly without even looking at Kitamaru. You. Kitamaru felt a bit annoyed, but he still held back. He knew that Tayuya always spoke bluntly, but almost at the same time, Kitamaru thought of a question. Tayuya probably didn't act like this around that person, right? Thinking of this, Kitamaru spoke again with some resentment. Tayuya, the Chunin exams are coming up, and Orochimaru-sama ordered us to be ready. You're not still hanging around that guy, are you? None of your business. Tayuya repeated. At this time, her red hair was covering her eyes. Her gaze is icy, and her mood is foul. Tayuya, you. Kitamaru finally couldn't take it anymore. He rushed forward to block her path, shouting at her. You haven't fallen for that kid, have you? He just bought you a few meals, that's all. And that Kyuubi's Jinchuriki is such a With a bang, Kitamaru's eyes widened slightly, and the next second, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of bile, and his whole body instantly bent into a shrimp shape. Tayuya had kicked him hard in the stomach, and then watched indifferently as he writhed in agony. Kitamaru, are you okay? Jirobo, who looked like a sumo wrestler, hurried over to help Kitamaru up and asked with a worried look on his face. Get lost. Kitamaru pushed Jirobo away. His face is twisted with anger, and he left with gritted teeth. The next day, Naruto went out as usual, wandering around, fishing by the river, and swimming under a waterfall. After playing alone for a while, he felt a bit bored. He had guessed Tayuya's identity, but chose not to expose her. The reason was simple. Tayuya was the only one who had nothing to do at that time. With time to kill, they had played together for a few days. Now that the dream was over, it was time for Naruto to start stirring things up in Konoha. Naruto pulled up the system panel and typed into the avatar's dialog box, August 29th, with nothing to do, I'll make a casual prophecy. Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, will die during the Chunin exams. After clicking confirm, smile crept onto Naruto's face. At this moment, almost everyone in Konoha put down what they were doing and a look of horror appeared on their faces. Sandaime Hokage-sama will die. In a men's hot spring somewhere in Konoha. Jiraiya, who was soaking in the hot spring, suddenly turned serious and stared straight ahead. The tranquility of his mind shattered by the message. Even though Jiraiya and Sandaime had their differences, it was precisely because of these differences that he chose to travel, while Tsunade chose to indulge in gambling. But no matter what, Jiraiya never thought Sandaime would die. This message was clearly not a prank, as there was no chakra disturbance, yet the message entered his mind without traces. It was like a thought implanted directly into his brain, but so clear. With a splash, Jiraiya stood up from the hot spring. He wrapped the white towel on his head onto his waist, then slowly walked out of the hot spring. He had to meet Sandaime to see if he was dead or not. In the Konoha forest, at a training ground with 3 wooden stakes. The fallen leaves swirled down in the wind and were instantly torn apart by sharp blades. Thud thud thud. 3 kunai accurately hit the bullseye, prompting a sigh of admiration from the girl with 2 buns on her head. Bullseye, Neji, you're amazing. If it's just this level, it can't be said to be amazing. Neji said with a cold face. 3121. 3122. Lee gritted his teeth, doing one-handed push-ups nearby. That's already very good. After all, Neji is a genius. Tenten reassured. A genius? Neji tightened his knee pads and his gaze shifted to Lee beside him. Uchiha Sasuke is the real genius. Only by fighting him can I know the gap. Neji, what do you think about that shinobi god thing? Tenten seemed to suddenly remember something and asked nervously. The sudden talk about Hokage-sama dying during the Chunin exams and now Gai-sensei being summoned back by Hokage-sama. I'm not sure. Neji said expressionlessly, the higher-ups will definitely have a solution. It's not something we should worry about. Even though that's what you say, the Chunin exams will definitely be affected. Tenten said worriedly. After all, it concerns Hokage-sama, and if things go wrong, the Chunin exams might be cancelled. Cancelled. Lee, who was sweating profusely from his upside-down push-ups, looked at the two and said, "Didn't Guy-sensei tell us it's unlikely to be cancelled? He said that we should just focus on training. It's really hard to say in this situation now. After all, that shinobi god's words might be." Tenten hesitated at this point. The shinobi god revealed secrets about the Uchiha and Hyuga clans respectively, and Neji standing next to her was the victim of the Hyuga clan's caged bird. "It's fake," Neji said calmly. "The village has already come out to refute the rumor and told us not to pay attention to the words of the shinobi god. Yeah, especially since the other party most likely be our enemies." Tenten sighed and said, "I wonder who this shinobi god really is. It's probably someone from the village, right? Didn't Guy-sensei say that people outside the village can't receive those sudden messages in their minds?" Lee continued talking as he sweated. Neji didn't say anything and continued with his own training, but his gaze becoming even calmer. "A genius of the Hyuga clan. Born into original sin, with the caged bird, there was no need for any genius. All the Hyuga clan needed was to preserve the main family's slaves. As long as they could survive, continuing like ugly beasts was irrelevant. What's the deal with that message?" Shikamaru, lying lazily on the grassy slope, stared with dead fish eyes. Asuma suddenly had something come up, and probably returned to the Hokage tower. After all, he was the Hokage's son, so he was probably very worried about Sandame's situation. The Ino Shika Cho trio suddenly found themselves with some free time. Shikamaru lounged around while Ino continued training, and Choji sat on the side munching on potato chips. Hearing this, Choji, munching on his chips, squinted his eyes and said, "Didn't the village say it was fake news?" "Who would believe that?" Shikamaru mumbled. "The incident with the Hyuga clan was real, wasn't it? Last year's top rookie should be from the branch family, right?" "Who told you that?" Ino, who had stopped training, heard their conversation and walked over to ask. "I heard it from my father," Shikamaru said, putting a blade of grass in his mouth, staring at the cotton candy clouds drift by in the sky with dead fish eyes. "That genius of the Hyuga clan probably has the caged bird cursed seal on his forehead too." Hearing this, Ino sighed. "There's nothing we can do about the matters of big clans." "Yeah," Shikamaru agreed, staring at the blue sky for a moment before suddenly asking, "Ino, do you have a conflict with that guy Naruto?" Ino was stunned for a moment when she heard this, then answered in a panic, "No, no, why are you asking? Didn't you deliberately avoid Naruto last time?" Shikamaru continued, "I'm just a little confused. When we went to submit the application form for the Chunin exams today, why there were only Sakura and Sasuke from Team 7. I don't know what's wrong with Naruto. He used to crave recognition so much, but now, he seems to have lost all his drive." "I don't know about that either," Ino said with a smile. "Besides, I've had my share of conflicts with him, so there's nothing strange about that." "Yeah, who knows what that guy is up to?" Shikamaru complained. Naruto. Choji, who was eating potato chips, turned to them and suddenly said, "I saw him recently, and he seemed to be with a little girl." "A little girl?" Ino was slightly surprised. "Probably an orphan from the village." Choji shoveled the potato chips into his mouth. "I saw them at the barbecue restaurant. That guy Naruto, I feel like he doesn't even seem like a shinobi anymore." "Yeah, who knows? I haven't seen him train lately." Shikamaru sighed and said, "Last time I saw him, he wasn't even wearing his forehead protector." "How is it possible?" Ino was shocked. Naruto wanted a shinobi's forehead protector so much before, how could he? "It's hard to say." Shikamaru stood up and looked out from the hillside. His gaze rose from the grassy plain, past the swaying grass, over a fleeting white bird, and finally landed on a few small black dots in the distance. Those people are shinobi from Tsunade, right? Hearing this, Ino and Choji also looked in that direction, and cold sweat immediately formed on their foreheads. On the grassland some distance away from them, a shinobi carrying a gourd had a gloomy look on his face, and the other two shinobi, a man and a woman, also looked at the three of them with unfriendly expressions. The two groups locked eyes, and the Ino Shika Cho trio felt a chill down their spines. It's like a fear of being watched by a predator. Fortunately, the three Tsunade's shinobi did not continue to walk towards them, but changed direction and headed towards the Hokage Tower. That guy with the gourd is scary, Ino said with a lingering fear on her face, patting her chest in relief. I hope we don't run into them during the Chunin exams. Shikamaru swallowed his saliva and agreed with a pale face. Crunch, crunch. Choji was frightened and tilted his head back to pour a bag of potato chips into his mouth. Tamari, I heard that there is also a Jinchuriki in this village. Kankuro, who was walking on the road carrying a puppet on his back, asked his sister, Tamari. Yes, it's the most powerful one, Kyubi. Tamari had a huge folding fan hanging behind her back, and she was wearing a shoulder-bearing fishnet dress, with a slightly displeased look on her face. Kankuro initially wanted to make a few sarcastic remarks, but remembering that his cold-blooded, murderous Jinchuriki brother was standing right next to him, he quickly dismissed the idea. The conversation came to an abrupt end. Jinchuriki, which is comparable to walking human-shaped nuclear bombs, were terrifying to anyone who dealt with them. Kankuro was definitely scared of being squashed to death by his own brother's transformed hand. Gaara remained silent throughout the whole process and seemingly uninterested in his siblings' conversation. As the three entered Konoha's main street, their unusual appearance immediately drew the attention of passers-by. However, it was just a brief moment of curiosity. With the Chunin exams around the corner, seeing a few genin from other villages on the streets was not uncommon. Among the crowd, a young boy with spiky blonde hair was leisurely wandering around with a drink in his hand. His bright hair made him stand out, and he had a lazy expression on his face. Naruto no longer needs to take part in the Chunin exams, and Kakashi is busy training Sasuke and helping Sakura with her taijutsu training. Anyway, Naruto was left alone with plenty of free time. Besides aimlessly wandering around the streets, his favorite pastime was transforming into an adult using the transformation technique to sneak into Konoha's arcade and play pachinko. He didn't wear the Konoha forehead protector, leaving his forehead exposed and his blonde hair conspicuous as he roamed around having fun. Since Sandaime didn't want him to take the Chunin exams, he decided to let loose and enjoy himself. The reason Naruto wanted to participate in the Chunin exams was purely to trigger the system's options. If that didn't happen, he wouldn't be too disappointed. Worst case scenario, he could always use the time to hang out with Hinata and unlock the Kyubi's progress. The feeling of getting stronger while flirting with girls is indeed really comfortable. Fox demon brat, get lost. I'm not selling anything to you. The mask shop owner glared at Naruto with a look of disgust. Naruto, who was picking out a fox mask, turned his head at the sound of the shop owner's voice. He first stared at the shop owner deeply, and then unexpectedly put on the fox mask on his face. Step by step, Naruto walked towards the shop owner. The mask shop owner was frightened by the silent, masked Naruto. He stumbled backward and fell to the ground with a thud. When he turned his head to look at Naruto, the spot where Naruto had been standing was empty. Are you looking for me? Naruto's voice suddenly came from directly behind the shop owner. The man, still on the ground, looked up to see Naruto, who's wearing the fox mask, leaning over and staring down at him. Ah, monster. Ha ha ha. What's the matter, mister? Are you really that scared? The terrified screams mixed with Naruto's carefree laughter, attracting the attention of passers-by who looked on at the scene inside the shop with horror on their faces. Naruto, however, was unbothered. He walked straight up to the shop owner, removed the mask from his face, and asked with a bright smile, "Mister, will you sell me the mask?" Sell. Sell. The mask shop owner was already intimidated and no longer dared to make any sarcastic remarks. Oh. The smile on Naruto's face suddenly disappeared at this moment. He casually tossed the fox mask onto the ground and said softly, "But I don't want it anymore." As he said this, he stomped on the fox mask on the ground and broke it into pieces. Then, he turned around and kicked the mask stand next to him down. The force was so great that the masks on the rack instantly shattered into pieces. The mask shop owner, pale with fear, stared wide-eyed as his mask display collapsed with a crash. However, Naruto just glanced at the fallen shop owner and casually tossed a handful of bills into the air before leaving with a smile on his face. As he watched the fearful and shocked gazes of the villagers on the street, Naruto smiled to himself, "I'm a Jinchuriki, nobody owed anyone anything. Why should I give in to those bastards? They want me to be a nuclear weapon, but they always treated me poorly. Why should I accept it? That's the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, right?" Kankuro, who was passing by in the crowd, asked, pointing in the direction Naruto left. "Seems like it." Tamari nodded, her brow furrowed slightly. "Let's go meet him," Kankuro suggested eagerly, his face filled with anticipation. "Don't meddle in other people's business." Tamari refused decisively, and said in a low voice, "Don't forget our mission. That Kyuubi brat doesn't look easy to mess with." But before Tamari could finish her words, Gaara, who had been silent all along, stepped towards the direction Naruto had left. "Gaara." Tamari reached out to stop him, but Kankuro swiftly intervened her. He shook his head at Tamari with a rare serious expression and said, "He's made his decision. It's best not to interrupt him." Tamari fell silent and reluctantly withdrew her hand. She sighed and could only signal Kankuro to follow her as they went after Gaara. This time, Tsunade participated in the Chunin exams held by Konoha was not only for the exam, but also to secretly formulated an attack plan to destroy Konoha. As an important part of the plan, the three siblings were sent to Konoha early to participate in the Chunin exams and gather intelligence. It is precisely because of this that Tamari did not want to cause any unexpected trouble before their mission even began. In the alley, Naruto suddenly stopped in his tracks. Kyuubi's approval 13.2%. During his recent date with Hinata, the progress bars soared very quickly, from 2.3% to 6.7%, and finally surged to 13.2% during the fireworks. Compared to 2.3%, 13.2% meant that Naruto had already used 1/9 of the Kyuubi's power, even capable of manifesting one tail. He turned around and saw the three siblings from Tsunade standing outside the alley. His gaze lingered momentarily on Temari's exposed shoulder net outfit. The atmosphere in the Tsunade was indeed more open. Naruto couldn't help but recall a Tamari fan art he had seen before he crossed over here. Gaara stared at the blonde-haired figure before him and spoke, "I smell the scent of my kind from you." As soon as he opened his mouth, Gaara showed his Tsunade syndrome. Naruto knew very well that Gaara was still in his rebellious phase at this time, so he didn't bother with him too much. After all, Gaara is the legitimate prince of Tsunade, and standing beside him is the Tsunade's princess, Tamari, and the young prince Kankuro, who has no interest in the throne. All three had a somewhat non-mainstream look, which made Naruto lose any desire to communicate directly. Waving his hand dismissively at Gaara, Naruto said impatiently, "I'm not a Tsunade. How can I be the same as you?" "Chuni what?" Kankuro asked in confusion. "You guys have fun. I'm leaving." Naruto waved his hand again, turned around, and started to leave. But as soon as he lifted his foot, a surge of killing intent suddenly surrounded him. This strong killing intent came from behind him, from Gaara, who loved playing with sand. Naruto glanced back, and the Kyuubi's chakra surged instantly. His face transformed into a half-human, half-fox expression as he snarled at the Tsunagaku's genins. Get lost. Don't make me say it a second time. Outside the alley, Tamari and the other two stood in the sunlight, but they were completely stunned. Even Gaara retracted his killing intent and looked at Naruto in the shadows with fear. Let's go. Tamari whispered urgently, no longer caring about anything else at the moment. She quickly grabbed the hands of her two rebellious brothers, not looking back as she hurriedly led them out of the alley. It wasn't until they had gone a considerable distance that she released them, gasping for breath. What was that? Kankuro, whose face was painted with purple striped camouflage, asked, his eyes vacant and his hand trembling as it supported him against the wall. Kankuro, still rational, knew that Gaara standing beside him was also a monster and that the term, monster, was taboo, so he didn't say anything harmful or unnecessary. The Kyuubi, Tamari, with her entire body trembling, said. Her legs were so tense that they were still spasming. How could there be such a terrifying thing in Konoha? Kankuro recalled the scene moments ago, his purple lips quivering incessantly. Kyuubi. At this moment, the Jonin leading the Tsunagaku team had already stood beside them. He frowned and glanced at the three. How is it possible? You must have been tricked by that brat. Tricked. Tamari and Kankuro exchanged glances, but Gaara didn't react at all and still stood there indifferently. Baki-sensei, what do you mean? Tamari asked anxiously, cold sweat beading on her forehead. Baki, the Jonin referred to by Tamari, wore a stern expression, dressed in black tight-fitting clothes with a brown Tsunagaku's Jonin vest over it. He had a piece of white cloth draped over half of his head, covering the left side of his face. His tone was serious and somewhat authoritative. You don't need to worry too much. Baki said. Kyuubi reappeared in Konoha more than a decade ago. It is believed that the mature Jinchuriki is already dead. The current Konoha's Jinchuriki is just an ordinary kid who can't control the power of the Biju at all. Having said this, Baki paused, looked at his three students and continued, what you described was a Biju transformation. That is something that only a perfect Jinchuriki can do. If Konoha really had such a Jinchuriki, how could we have continued the Konoha Crush plan? Sensei, are you saying that kid can't really control the Kyuubi and just pretended to use Biju transformation to scare us? Tamari asked in surprise. Of course, otherwise, how could it be so coincidental that the village's most important Jinchuriki just happened to pass by you? Baki nodded. His eyes seemed to see through Konoha's conspiracy, and he showed a stiff smile as if he had comprehended everything. The Chunin exams are a competition to showcase the new generation's strength from various villages. How could Konoha miss this great opportunity to intimidate our Tsunagaku? I see. Kankuro nodded. Although he still felt something was wrong, he felt it was unimportant. Since a Jonin like Baki said so, and their ally for this cooperation had very reliable intelligence, there is naturally no reason to doubt it. Tamari also breathed a sigh of relief, then gritted her teeth and said viciously, that guy actually dared to trick us. He better not fall into my hands in the future. Gaara, who had remained indifferent, merely glanced at them coldly, but did not speak to correct them. The moment he lowered his head, his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Gaara knew best whether that was the pressure from a Biju, and there was no doubt about it, it was the Kyuubi. The next day, a heavy rain poured down in Konoha. Led by Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke headed to the Hokage Tower to submit their Chunin exam application forms. The three of them walked in the rain holding umbrellas. Under the pink umbrella, Sakura broke the silence and mustered up the courage to ask Kakashi, whose back was ahead of them, Kakashi-sensei, why can't Naruto take the Chunin exam with us? Kakashi stopped upon hearing her question and turned to look at Sakura. It's Hokage-sama's order, there's nothing we can do about it. But, Sakura swallowed, her fingers gripping the umbrella handle turning white in the downpour, we're a team, aren't we? The sound of the rain drowned out most external noises, forcing Sakura to shout so that Kakashi could hear her. Raindrops soaked the tips of her pink hair. Her voice trembled slightly with hesitation. You taught us, Kakashi-sensei, that we are a team. So we shouldn't just leave Naruto behind. Sasuke also stopped and frowned slightly. Although he didn't say anything, his gaze toward Kakashi conveyed his agreement. Even if this is the order of Hokage-sama, are you going to disobey it? Kakashi asked, looking down at Sakura without emotion. Perhaps your and Sasuke's qualification for the exam will also be affected. Even so, will you still insist? Sakura hesitated upon hearing Sasuke might be affected too. Kakashi ignored Sakura's hesitation. He single-eye swept over Sasuke and Sakura, and he asked them in a serious tone, the Chunin exams is the only way for a genin to become a Chunin. It is also the fastest way for you to become a Chunin. After becoming a Chunin, both the mission rewards and the resources you'll receive are many times those of a genin. You all have your goals, don't you? Isn't it better to achieve them sooner? The Chunin exams this time is in Konoha, our home ground. It's a rare opportunity. If you wanted to wait for another chance like this, it might be a while. By then, your peers from the academy might already be jonin. Even so, will you still insist? Boom. Lightning flashed through the rain, and the sound of the downpour grew louder. The raindrops hitting the umbrella seemed to be questioning their consciences. Sakura and Sasuke both fell into silence, allowing the sound of rain to be infinitely amplified. It's okay. Kakashi spoke again. The order not to participate in this Chunin exam was personally given by Sandaime Hokage-sama. It is not something you can change. Let's go, or we'll be late. As he said that, Kakashi had already turned around and was walking forward with his tactical boots splashing in the puddles. Sakura couldn't help but cry. She remembered the first time the three of them shared information, and Naruto's words of comfort to her. There's nothing wrong with being an ordinary person. Sakura, your strength isn't in combat. You don't need to overextend yourself. Sasuke and I handle the fighting. Sakura couldn't hold back any longer, and tears welled up in her eyes as she lowered her head and sobbed. She regretted her moment of hesitation, knowing Naruto had never wavered in such moments. Kakashi-sensei, I still want to take the Chunin exams with Naruto. Sakura raised her head and shouted out. Tears blurred her vision, and she wasn't sure if Kakashi had already walked far away or if the heavy rain had drowned out her words. The sound of footsteps splashing through water approached, and Sakura felt a warm hand rest on her head. When she looked up, she saw Kakashi's smiling eye, and he said gently, I agreed. You are indeed exceptional. Sasuke has already told me, and Sakura, you've done very well. This feels so good. Naruto soaked in the hot spring, feeling his skin gradually relax. He closed his eyes and let out amidst the rising steam. Outside, the heavy rain continued to pour. Due to his reckless actions yesterday, the Anbu had resumed their surveillance of the Jinchuriki, so Naruto had simply decided to hide away in the hot spring. Was it really necessary just because he knocked over a mask stall? Besides, didn't I pay for it? Wasn't the money he threw into the air still money? And the shop owner did take those money in the end. On the rooftop opposite the hot spring, an Anbu's member was very unhappy. Even though he was hiding carefully, the heavy rain outside had nearly soaked his underwear. His heart was as cold as his damp underwear. It was normal for an Anbu's member to suffer a little. It was nothing new. But seeing his surveillance target leisurely blowing bubbles in the hot spring, sipping clear water, and even dining in the spring made him feel despondent. Just as the Anbu's member was feeling the gloom of life, thinking that he was living worse than a kid and questioning his resolve as a shinobi amidst the rain, there was a sudden bang, and another Anbu's member appeared through the rain. Shift change, Yama. The Anbu's member codenamed Yama turned around and his lifeless eyes startled his colleague. Yama, Are you okay? I'm fine. Yama shook his head, exhaling a breath in the rain and muttering softly, maybe I should visit the hot spring too, but Commander never gives us any leave. Soaking in a hot spring must be so comfortable and warm. Damn it, why did I become an Anbu knowing this job is endless overtime? But if I don't become a shinobi, I'd have to go into other lines of work. Being a host in a nightclub doesn't seem so bad. Maybe I should try resigning to the commander after this shift. The new Anbu's member swallowed hard as he watched his partner's disheartened back. Yama, his soul has been polluted by the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki. Midlife crises aren't avoidable, even for Anbu. After all, Konoha doesn't keep idle people. If a shinobi passed the golden age of 30, they had to consider transitioning to other roles. Generally speaking, shinobi from large clans would start taking over clan affairs around the age of 27 or 28, transforming from combatants to civil servants who uphold the will of fire in a steady and loyal manner. There are many such examples, such as Neji's deceased father, Hyuga Hazashi, and the older generation of the Ino Shika-cho trio. As the saying goes, dragons beget dragons, phoenixes beget phoenixes, the son of a strategist is a strategist, the disciple of a Hokage is a Hokage. Is the essence of the will of fire hard work over talent? Of course not. The will of fire is truly divine. Naruto sighed in the hot spring, no wonder Sandaime is said to be the greatest Hokage of Konoha. It really is true. Theism, pantheism, and child of prophecy are all little brothers in front of the will of fire. Splash. Naruto stood up from the hot spring pool, walked slowly towards the shore, and a smile suddenly appeared on his face. The will of fire, hey. In the midst of summer, heavy rain poured down relentlessly. The murky gray sky resembled a giant inverted bowl, tightly covering the sky over Konoha. It was already afternoon, but Naruto still hadn't worn his forehead protector. He walked towards his apartment in his loose black robe, stepping through puddles with a splashing sound. Children without umbrellas can only run hard. Naruto agreed deeply with this statement. Just now, he had watched a child without an umbrella dash past him, his pants rolled up high, splashing water half a meter with each step. Shira didn't bring an umbrella again today. An old man at the street corner called out to the sprinting boy from the shop doorway. Grandpa Ku, don't worry about me. The boy's voice was full of determination. I want to be the Hokage in the future. Hearing this, Naruto's eyelids twitched slightly. Just as Naruto was pondering whether the boy wanted to be Tsunade's man or Sandaime's man, there was a loud bang. The boy stepped into a puddle, slipped heavily, and fell into it. At this time, his face and body were covered in yellow mud spots. Give the umbrella in your hand to the young Shira, so that he can feel the warmth of the world. Reward. Max level 4 symbol seal. Walks away indifferently, and before leaving, mocked the young Shira, letting him feel the malice of the world. Reward. Shukaku's favor. Hearing this, Naruto was stunned. What kind of dark, perverted and heaven-defying choices are these? For a young boy, how much psychological damage would a slip after falling into a puddle cause? Oh no, oh no, oh no. Sighing, Naruto showed a compassionate expression as he walked in front of the boy with a large black umbrella. The boy in the puddle gasped for breath, struggling to get up. There's bright red blood oozing from his trouser legs. Despite this, he still wore a sunny smile on his face. Just as he was about to make a self-deprecating remark to ease the embarrassment, he suddenly noticed a large black umbrella covering him, and a yellow-haired man in a black loose robe was looking at him. The young Shira looked somewhat surprised, seemingly puzzled about why this blonde boy was standing next to him. Could this be the encounter of friendship between boys in the youth storybook? Just when the young Shira was about to express his goodwill, a large black umbrella was suddenly handed to him, and the blonde boy spoke calmly. For you. Shira instinctively wanted to refuse, but then he thought that he could use this umbrella as an opportunity to start a new friendship, so why not? Thank you. Shira gripped the handle of the umbrella and was about to say some opening remarks to introduce himself, but in his mind, he was already imagining the scene of chasing dreams together with his new friend. My name is Shira, what's your? Before he could finish his sentence, the umbrella handle in his hand was suddenly snatched back by Naruto, who walked away without looking back. Huh, snap. The dream of chasing dreams together under the sunset was shattered. The young Shira's face instantly flushed red, and he blurted out something as he looked at Naruto's quickly departing back. Psycho. Ding. The 4-symbol seal is acquired successfully and automatically nurtured to the maximum level. Naruto had already walked far away. The umbrella handle had left his hand for less than 3 seconds, and it still retained his body temperature. Having an umbrella on a rainy day really felt nice. The reason for choosing the 4-symbol seal is simple, which is to control Kyuubi in a physical sense. It's not a pleasant feeling to have a time bomb in his stomach, so he wanted to see if they can talk about it. If they can't, then he'll have to flip the table. Just use the 4-symbol seal to shrink the Kyuubi's cage, and then give him a lesson in confinement and restraint. As Naruto returned home, the rain gradually subsided. Humming a strange yet simple tune, he ascended the stairs with brisk steps. The old-style apartment where he lived had few residents, comprising a complex and peculiar mix of people. Sometimes he saw young girls, other times only old folks. But on rainy days, people were rarely seen. While shaking the rain off his big black umbrella and forcefully stomping his feet to shake off the rain-soaked pants. When Naruto was reaching for the key to open the door, he looked up and suddenly found a person squatting not far from the door. It was a young girl with cherry blossom pink hair and a broad forehead. She leaned against the wall, seemingly asleep, with her wet hair hanging down. Sakura. Sakura. Why is she here? Wasn't she supposed to be with Sasuke registering for the Chunin exams? Naruto crouched down and leaned over to take a look. Is she really asleep? Isn't this a plot straight out of light novels? Damn it. Degrading. He had never read those indecent light novels, only the proper romance ones on that particular site. Confirming that Sakura was indeed asleep, Naruto marveled at the peculiarity. Sakura was crouched against the wall, sitting in a position with her legs curled up and her butt touching the ground, her wet pink hair hanging down. The girl was breathing rhythmically with her eyes closed. People typically fall asleep easily in 2 scenarios, either in a warm air-conditioned room or when it's cold. The summer temperature was not low enough to freeze anyone to death. In fact, the heavy rain has washed away the heat of the past few days, making it quite cool. Something is fishy. Naruto scratched his head and tentatively nudged Sakura's shoe with his foot. No response. Scratching his head again, Naruto finally sensed a trace of chakra. Clumsily recalling the knowledge taught in the academy, he formed a dispelling hand seal. Wake up! Naruto called out, forming a hand seal with his hands, and fiery red chakra surged into Sakura's body. Instantly, Sakura's head snapped up, gasping for breath as if she hadn't breathed in ages. I'm saved, Sakura said tremblingly. What happened? Sasuke was taken away by a strange man, and I was caught in that man's genjutsu. Kakashi-sensei should be chasing after him. Naruto, you need to come with me. Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke are in danger. Sakura reached out to grab Naruto's hand. But in the next second, Naruto turned around and kicked Sakura right in the cheek. Oddly enough, Sakura let out a scream of pain and jumped back skillfully to create some distance. Though she still looked like Sakura, her eyes were particularly fierce at this time. How did you see through me? You seem to like digging into people's minds. Naruto retorted. Hee. The fake Sakura laughed, reaching behind her waist and quickly pulling out 2 sharp kunai. It doesn't matter if you don't tell me anything. After all, you're just a corpse. The fake Sakura still hadn't removed her disguise, and charged towards Naruto with two kunai in hand. Meanwhile, the surroundings began to change. A static noise buzzed in Naruto's ears, like the sound of an old projector getting stuck, and the light around him suddenly dimmed. To be more precise, the light around Naruto was swallowed by darkness. It didn't dim uniformly but was torn apart by the darkness as if it were consuming flesh and blood. Everything went pitch black, and Naruto felt the ground shaking beneath him, as if it might collapse at any moment. After calming himself down, Naruto instinctively stepped back and jumped away. This is a genjutsu world, while the real enemy was attacking him outside. Naruto didn't pay much attention to what he saw in the genjutsu world, instead focusing on instinctively controlling his body to avoid attacks. Until the enemy entered the genjutsu world as well. Boom! The darkness suddenly retreated, and Naruto looked up to find himself tied to a stone pillar. In the night sky, a blood-red moon hung, casting its crimson light equally on Naruto and the smirking face of the fake Sakura holding the kunai. Why do you always like to smile like that? Naruto constantly provoked the assassin, teasing their fragile nerves, knowing that calmness was the greatest mockery of death. Haha. Wait until your stomach is slit open, I will tell you the answer. The fake Sakura's eyes shone with a nearly pathological glint, and she kept on her fingers in her mouth. It was both a little seductive and a little terrifying. Her deranged state made her look like a mentally deranged lunatic. Whether she was speaking or her fingers, the fake Sakura's eyes never left Naruto, holding her face in a classic yandere pose. Indeed, having pink hair while acting like a yandere didn't feel out of place at all. Damn it, why am I thinking of Yuno Gasai at a time like this? What did you say you were going to do to me? Naruto smiled, looking completely unfazed. I didn't hear you clearly just now, can you say it again? Are you scared? Yes, I almost peed myself. Naruto said lightly, I plan to redeem you and guide you onto the right path. Redeem me? Ha 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 ha. The fake Sakura laughed like she had heard the biggest joke of the century, bending over in laughter. How are you going to redeem me? By begging for mercy. Maybe if you kneel and beg now, I might be in a good mood and let you go. Not a chance, you're dead. An hour here is only a minute outside. The fake Sakura slowly walked to the immobilized Naruto, raised the kunai in her hand high, and stared at Naruto expressionlessly. Die. Wait. Do you have any last words? The fake Sakura still maintained the posture of holding the kunai high. I do have something, Naruto coughed, staring intently at the fake Sakura, and asked. Have you ever seen a mouth seal? What? The question confused the fake Sakura. 4 symbols seal activated, devour. Boom. The genjutsu was instantly shattered by a devastating force, and that extremely terrifying force came with an ancient and dusty feeling. Suddenly, the fake Sakura vanished and was pulled into the seal while spinning. At the same time, in the dark and humid 4 symbols seal space, the fake Sakura landed in a puddle, and Naruto stood on the puddle in front of her. Behind Naruto, a huge fence-like mahogany cage stood tall. From the darkness, a giant fiery red fox head slowly emerged. The massive fox, like a mountain, had a mouth full of sharp teeth and blood-red eyes filled with terrifying malice. The fake Sakura was stunned, her body collapsing in the puddle as tears streamed uncontrollably. Naruto smiled and stared at the fake Sakura as he spoke word by word. I caught you, human. There was a huge flash of hatred in Kyuubi's eyes, and violent killing intent exploded in the dark, damp dungeon. Red chakra surged like a mist, desperately trying to escape the confines of the cage. Unfortunately, no matter how fast the red chakra moved, it remained trapped within the red bars of the cage. The spaces between the bars seemed to have an invisible barrier, separating inside from outside, creating an inescapable prison. Yes, a human. Naruto no longer paid attention to the fake Sakura in the puddle and turned to face the furious Kyuubi with a smile. So what can you do about it? Come out and beat me up. Roar. An furious roar erupted, causing the entire space to tremble violently. Water began to pour down more rapidly, gushing out. However, nothing changed. Naruto continued to stand there, laughing brazenly. At that moment, the fake Sakura behind him stood up again and rushed towards Naruto with a kunai in hand. The kunai aimed for Naruto's neck, but Naruto stood there seemingly unaware of the attack from behind. Boom! Just when the fake Sakura was about to succeed, a red tendril shot up from the ground and slapped her directly. The fake Sakura bent backward skillfully, dodging the red tendril that nearly grazed her nose. Seeing the tendril that matched the red bars of the cage, cold sweat drenched the fake Sakura's back. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. This place doesn't exist, it's just a genjutsu. But in the next second, more red tendrils sprouted from the ground and rushed towards the fake Sakura accurately as if they had intelligence. Bang! 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 The red tendrils kept attacking, shattering the ground. The fake Sakura's escape route was riddled with potholes. The tendrils moved faster and faster, almost imperceptible to the eye. Splat! One tendril pierced her flesh, and the fake Sakura screamed in agony. The remaining red tendrils seized this opportunity and struck. The fake Sakura's hands and feet, along with the skin and flesh, were nailed to the ground, and a tendril pierced her stomach, creating a gruesome wound. Blood spurted out and splattered all over the ground, forming a fox-shaped blood shadow. Ah! The heart-wrenching pain instantly corroded the fake Sakura's mind, and the transformation technique could no longer be maintained. With a bang, the fake Sakura's true form was revealed. It was a shinobi wearing a mask, and blood was seeping from under the mask. He had never imagined that a little genin brat would be so powerful. Any other genin would fight with fear when faced with life and death. But Naruto is different. The battle with Zabuza had made him grow, and walking the edge of life and death didn't frighten him, instead, it excited him. He understood one thing: the outcome of a battle isn't determined by the enemy's strength but by the intensity of one's own desire to fight. In other words, as long as they are enemies, they should be killed with all possible cruel means. The screams echoed in the dungeon. And Kyubi, who was watching from behind the red bars, showed a trace of fear in his eyes. He could sense the oppressive power of those red tendrils, which was very similar to the aura of the red bars imprisoning him. If the little brat in front of him could control those tendrils, then he could definitely control the red bars as well. But Kyubi hadn't realized that Naruto, who had been watching him all along without turning his head, had noticed the fear in his eyes and smiled. So, what do you think? What? Kyubi bared his teeth at Naruto, glaring at him with his red eyes. Human, you deserve to die. I asked what you thought of this performance. Naruto ignored Kyubi's outburst. Performance. Kyubi looked at Naruto with disdain and said contemptuously, "You humans just love to kill each other. It has always been this way for thousands of years. Seems that way." Naruto tilted his head, and his neck made a crisp sound. Ouch. It hurts so much. I'm dying, dying, dying. I should have known not to show off. Showing off will only lead to bad consequences. Cough, cough. Naruto awkwardly cleared his throat and waved his hand under Kyubi's contemptuous gaze. The shinobi, who was nailed to the ground and it was not certain whether he was from the Anbu or the root, was immediately dragged underground by the red tendrils. Moments later, he reappeared inside the red cage. The man still retained his consciousness, and under the influence of adrenaline, he looked in horror at the colossal red fox towering like a mountain. What do you want to do, human? Naruto lowered his head, his eyes obscured by shadows. Kyubi could only saw Naruto's mouth curled up. Swallow him. What? Kyubi was furious when he heard this. He was enraged that this human actually dared to command him, even suggesting him swallow a filthy human. What does he take me for? A dog? How ridiculous. Human, you will pay for your insolence. The space began to tremble with unprecedented force, as if on the verge of collapse. A red whirlwind emerged out of nowhere. Naruto stood amidst the oncoming red wind, swaying momentarily like a reed in autumn before stabilizing again. This time, Naruto's voice was cold and clear. He raised his head and stared at Kyuubi with a serious expression, commanding in an unquestionable tone, "Kurama, swallow him." The moment Naruto accurately called out his name, Kyuubi was momentarily stunned. Naruto's eyes burned with fierce and terrifying emotion. "Swallow him," Naruto shouted loudly, his voice stern and resolute. At this time, he seemed like a completely different person. There was boundless ferocity in his eyes, and his pupils were red as if they were about to burn. Kyuubi had no choice. His mind went blank and he was truly compelled by Naruto's command. He opened his massive maw and picked up the dying shinobi. "No, no, help, ah!" The sound of crunching echoed, followed by the shinobi's screams reverberating through the space. With a toss of his head, Kyuubi swallowed, and the shinobi's voice abruptly ceased. Dead silence. There was no sound in the space. Only Naruto's heartbeat was heard, which gradually slowed down and returned to normal. The red in Naruto's eyes faded, and his expression returned to normal. What had just happened seemed like a dream, but the glaring bloodstains on the ground reminded Kyuubi that, for a moment, he had indeed been controlled. In that instant, Kyuubi only felt that the soul of the little brat in front of him was exceptionally towering, and he was just a small cat in front of him. It was like an ill-tempered owner scolding his pet, and that fierce gaze had made even Kyuubi feel fear, instinctively choosing to obey. Humiliation, it was utterly humiliating. As a Biju, and the most powerful one at that, he was actually made to eat a human like a dog. Recalling the sensation in his throat, an unprecedented wave of nausea washed over Kyuubi's brain, nearly making him retch. In the damp and cold sealed space, one man and one fox stood quietly facing each other from across the red cage bars, their heights contrasting sharply. Drip, drip, drip. Water droplets fell from the eternally dark cell above, emphasizing the eerie silence within the seal space. "Human, how do you know my name?" Kyuubi couldn't hold back any longer and broke the silence first, staring intently at Naruto. Naruto, with his hands in his pockets and his large black robe draped over his shoulders, answered with a nonchalant expression and dead fish eyes, "I heard it from others." "You're lying." Kyuubi reacted violently, baring his teeth and shouting angrily, "Despicable human, do you still want to continue deceiving me?" "Human, are you talking to me?" Naruto asked curiously. "Despicable human, when I get out, I'll tear you to pieces." "It seems you still don't understand the current situation, Kurama." Naruto looked up with a smile and suddenly pointed at Kyuubi. "What do you want to do?" "Haha, I was just trying to scare you. Look how frightened you are." Naruto grinned. "Damn it, are you mocking me?" Kyuubi roared in fury, seemingly ready to unleash another wave of red chakra. But this time, Naruto's expression changed instantly, the smile on his face disappeared, replaced by a serious look. He pointed at Kyuubi and said, "Bind him." As his words fell, the red cage bars suddenly shrank inward at a rapid speed, rapidly compressing Kyuubi's movement space. Roar. "Damn it! What have you done?" "Ah!" Kyuubi's roar echoed as the red cage bars were struck violently, making loud bangs. 4 symbol seal, max level. Naruto stood calmly, patiently waiting for Kyuubi's anger to subside. It was a while until the sealed space was quiet once more. "Human, I'll be back, Kurama. I hope that next time, we can have a pleasant conversation." Naruto said. His consciousness flickered and he left the seal space directly. In a flash, Naruto stood in the hallway. The heavy rain outside had almost stopped. He reached into his pocket, trying to find his apartment key. As he pulled out the keys, he suddenly heard footsteps coming up the stairs from the other end of the corridor, and it seemed that there was more than one person. After what happened just now, Naruto furrowed his brows and stared at the entrance of the corridor. "Naruto, A girl's bright and melodious voice starkly contrasted with the death and blood. Her jade-like neck moved with her Sakura pink hair, so white it was almost dazzling. Sakura walked out from the hallway with a smile, waving at Naruto from afar. The post-rain golden sunlight filtered through her hair. Following behind him were two people, the lazy Kakashi and the icy-faced Sasuke. Yo, Naruto. Kakashi had been to Naruto's house before, but this was the first time he used the front door, so he seemed somewhat unfamiliar with it. For some reason, Anbu's members liked appearing on rooftops or outside windows, places animals usually prefer. It's no wonder they wore animal masks. Sasuke stared straight ahead at the blonde boy who was about to open the door. His gaze stopped at his smooth forehead without the forehead protector, and he said with a tone of disdain mixed with regret, "Tisk. Sakura. Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke, why are you here?" Naruto's hand was behind his back, ready to activate the four-symbol seal at any moment. That Chunin exams, Sakura said loudly, mustering her courage, "We all want to take part in it together with you, Naruto." Huh. Naruto tilted his head, his hand behind his back slowly relaxing. The Root's underground office. Danzo-sama, the mission failed. Asada is dead. A Root shinobi wearing a blue patterned mask knelt on one knee, while Danzo, with his right eye bandaged, sat solemnly in front of his desk without saying a word. Dead? Danzo asked sullenly, what about the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki? Speak. Danzo stared at the shinobi and said dissatisfiedly. The shinobi, who was half kneeling on the ground, suddenly broke out in a cold sweat and answered mechanically, the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki swallowed Asada. Swallowed. It's a sealing technique. The Root shinobi responded truthfully, it should be the four-symbol seal of the Uzumaki clan. Asada was ed into the seal. Knock. 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 Danzo tapped the table and coldly spoke, "Go tell Sandame that the Jinchuriki qualification test experiment has failed and the target exceeds the Root's containment value. Temporarily set the violation level to 7. In the Root, everyone had to obey Danzo's orders absolutely and never ask any questions." The Root shinobi acknowledged the command and disappeared immediately. On the other side, Sandame was smoking his pipe with a serious expression, his brows tightly furrowed. He was looking at two reports on his desk. One report was the mission failure test result from Root, and the other was a collective request submitted by Team 7 to restore Naruto's eligibility for the Chunin exams. The form not only contained requests from Sakura and Sasuke but also an unexpected accountability statement from Kakashi, complete with handprints and signatures. Hokage-sama, the Hokage's guard, Rado, stood by with a similarly grim expression. The power of the Jinchuriki has already exceeded the village's control. It hasn't reached that point yet. Sandame exhaled a puff of white smoke. His face was withered like tree bark, but his eyes were sharp like a hawk's. Kakashi mentioned Naruto's jutsu in the mission report from the Land of Waves, describing it as scorching lava. That's a fusion of earth and fire chakra attributes into lava release, used by Yonbi's Jinchuriki from the Land of Earth. Yonbi, Jinchuriki. Rado was a little surprised. How could Naruto use the jutsu of the Yonbi's Jinchuriki from the Land of Earth? I don't know. Sandame said seriously. I initially wanted to test whether Naruto had been replaced by someone else in the Land of Waves, possibly by the recently appeared self-proclaimed shinobi god. Naruto's recent behavior is very strange, with inexplicable wealth and power, but only the members of the Uzumaki clan can use the four-symbol seal, and only Naruto can contain the Kyuubi. As he spoke, Sandame let out another helpless sigh, closed his eyes and gave instructions, order the Anbu to cease the surveillance on the Jinchuriki. But, Hokage-sama, wouldn't it be too dangerous if the Jinchuriki is not supervised? After all, Rado looked at the report from the Root, where it clearly stated. Violation level 7. Hokage-sama, there are only 10 violation levels, right? Rado swallowed hard, but even Kyuubi's danger level is only 6. The 4 symbols seal is a very dangerous sealing technique that can seal the Kyuubi and even any object. Sandaime explained in a deep voice. The people at Root always like to exaggerate the facts and always ignore individual human beings. But humans have emotions, and weapons can be controlled. Sunshine, flowers, bonds of friendship, budding love, recognition from the village, these are the best ways to contain a weapon. The summer is hot and the cicadas are chirping. Ah! Naruto yawned sleepily while squatting on the tree. Kakashi had promised him a personal training session, but the sun was already high in the sky and he still hadn't shown up. Just as Naruto was contemplating ditching the session, Kakashi finally arrived. Yo, Naruto. Kakashi greeted with a cheerful smile, looking up at Naruto in the tree without any hint of guilt for being late. Are you wearing your forehead protector properly? Yes. That's good. The forehead protector is the lifeblood of a shinobi. Kakashi explained with a smile. Especially during missions, shinobi will only take off their forehead protectors when they die. So normally, shinobi won't take the initiative to take off their forehead protectors, as it's not auspicious. Nay, Kakashi-sensei. Has Hokage-sama agreed to me taking the Chunin exams? Naruto asked hesitantly. He agreed. Really? Of course it's true. Kakashi's eye narrowed into a line with a smile. Otherwise, why would I ask you to do special training? You have just become a genin and need further guidance from a jonin before you can handle the Chunin exams. Sakura and Sasuke have already completed their training, and now it's just you, Naruto. Alright, Naruto, don't be happy so early. Kakashi glanced at Naruto with one eye and warned, training can be very tough. It's okay, Kakashi-sensei, I can handle it. Naruto said excitedly, let's start right away. To be honest, he didn't want to train at all. However, considering that his recent antics had attracted the Root, Naruto decided to restrain himself a bit. Okay. Then go report to Guy-sensei. Kakashi said with a cough. What? Naruto was dumbfounded. Training with Might Guy. Oh my god, there's outsourcing in this world too. Cough, cough, the only area you need to improve is taijutsu. Kakashi scratched his head and said seriously, Sakura also completed her training with the medical team. Huh. Naruto held his head, giving Kakashi a bewildered look, similar to Psyduck's confused stare, not fully trusting what he was saying. Alright, I'm quite busy, you know that. Naruto. Watching Naruto leave, Kakashi stood with his hands in his pockets. The image of Sandaime's old face, standing in front of the window, smoking a pipe and talking, flashed through his mind. The original purpose of the Jinchuriki is to protect the village, Kakashi. It's not a good thing for Naruto to be too powerful. One more thing, Jiraiya has returned to the village. Kakashi, after the training, leave Naruto to Jiraiya. The decision was already made, and Kakashi had no room for objections. After standing in the sunlight for a while, Kakashi soon turned around and left as well. Yuhu. The blue beast of Konoha is here. Burn. Youth. 2 green-clad watermelon-headed shinobi, one big and one small, leapt across each other and performed the leaf whirlwind in midair, putting on a passionate entrance show. Naruto was left speechless, Neji stood expressionless, and Tenten massaged her forehead in exasperation. Initially, it was Guy who insisted on having Lee assist him in making an impression on Naruto, resulting in this cringe-worthy scene. After landing, Guy approached Naruto and asked with his big white teeth showing. So, Naruto, how was that? Cool, right? Super cool. Please teach me taijutsu, Might Guy-sensei. Naruto, I like kids with a keen eye like you. Guy laughed heartily, crouching down, his dazzling white teeth reflecting the light. Neji, unable to stand it anymore, turned and left. He usually trained alone, and Guy would occasionally give him guidance on taijutsu. Tenten smiled at Naruto, waved, and left as well, considering she had already introduced herself. Yosha. Guy shouted enthusiastically, looking at his disciple Lee and Naruto, and then said, run 500 laps around Konoha. If you can't finish it, do 501 finger push-ups. What else could Naruto say? He could only comply tearfully. Wait, Naruto, do you know the secret to becoming stronger in taijutsu? Guy suddenly asked. Hearing this, Naruto was stunned for a second. Why was I being tested out of the blue? Is it hard work? Naruto asked tentatively. No. Guy raised his index finger and shook it, then he magically took out a green, tight-fitting outfit from his pocket. What the hell? Staring at the bright green outfit, Naruto gulped and looked up to the sky with tears in his eyes. I'll wear it. The suffering and mental damage don't matter. Just grit your teeth and do it for the sake of cool taijutsu. Just go for it. I don't believe that I can't trigger the system options. So, after running 500 laps, Naruto was exhausted, with his eyes vacant, also muttering strange words like Halloween. Naruto, how are you? Guy asked as he looked down at Naruto, who was lying on the ground foaming at the mouth. Guy-sensei. Lee, standing nearby, said energetically, Naruto must have comprehended the power of youth. Exactly. In response, Naruto stretched out his trembling hand and tried to shout for help, with his thumb half clenched and turned outward as if he was giving a thumbs up. Upon seeing this, both Guy and Lee's faces tensed instantly. After they glanced at each other for a moment, they hugged each other with tears in their eyes. Lee, Naruto is the true spirit of passionate youth. Guy shouted with tears in his eyes, it's so touching. Sensei. I will definitely surpass Naruto. Yes. Let's start now. Guy said, pointing ahead with great pride, walk 500 laps around the village on your hands. If you can't do it, it will be 3,000 push-ups. Under the setting sun, the large and small blue beasts of Konoha walked away on their hands, leaving Naruto lying on the ground, who was already thinking about dinner. There was the sound of footsteps, and suddenly, Naruto felt someone stopped beside him and he opened his eyes to look. It was late in the evening, but that familiar blonde hair stood out. Ino, who has the same hairstyle as Deidara's, leaned over and looked at Naruto with a frown, as if she was hesitating about something. Naruto suddenly opened his eyes, which startled her directly. Ah, the corpse is alive. Damn it, I'm not dead. Naruto shouted angrily. The red sunset clouds painted half of Konoha with a fiery hue. Ino's face was tinged with a bashful red, making her look a bit shy. What are you wearing? Ino asked with disgust. Training gear. That green color is so gross. Just shut up. Naruto was speechless. Of course he knew that the clothes were tacky, but even after he had gone to such lengths, there's still no response from the system. Damn it. Stupid system. Ding. A mechanical voice suddenly rang out,